are joining up, let's probably give them like 2 more minutes and then we will start. I think just yeah, and once again, thank you so much for doing this. We'll kind of just try to focus around three general topics. So just how to use customer research to find customer insights. How do you use secondary research? Because then I think for most people who write, most of the time, sorry, my little man is talking. For most of the time, yeah, the secondary research is what most people use to write. They write most of the work they do as a writer most of the time. So just how do you also find that and use that to generate insights that are different? Because I guess like blogging or writing has become a very massive thing right now, and sometimes it just feels like everybody's just writing the same thing. So like how do you do something different from every other person? And then finally, like how do you apply, and I'm very excited about this last part, is just how do you apply these insights to keywords, blog topics, and most important, distribution, because I'm learning as I'm building building a content program that distribution is everything. Like, and it's the difference between your blog being an everyday blog and your blog being, one everybody wants to go to for insights or for entertainment or for whatever you decide you want to use it for. So that's basically it. We'll start in a minute. You probably kick off the introduction, and then I'll kick off my questions. And at the end, hopefully some of the attendees will have questions. I might have some questions. And then I like to literally just let them, since I ask most of the questions, I like to let the participants just ask most of the questions. And then so that everybody can get the best value or the most value out of this.
So a quick question. So what we'll do today is we'll just have like a dialogue back and forth. You don't want me to
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
cool.
Unless you want to present a deck, I mean that's okay. Yeah.
I actually prefer having a conversation, but I had that presentation ready, so I was like, well, if we have to do it, I can totally do it. And so yeah, I think it's good. I think the one question I have is, what was your first question? Because I have secondary research is how to find and use that. How do you apply it to topics, keywords, and distribution? What was the first question?
Yeah. I mean, it was just generally, how do you find customer insights? So I feel like that's a broader question. And then we now double click into how you now use secondary research to find insights.
Okay.
Because cool. I mean, because like customer insights, I mean, you can probably do a survey. I mean, just give an example. I'm probably going ahead of myself. But you do survey and get your own semi-primary insight, but sometimes of the time you're writing a topic where you don't have any idea, or you're writing for a client and you're like, how do you find data that is useful, relevant, and helpful to whoever is going to read the blog post.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Great. So I think at this point we'll probably start, and I'll probably just ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about Daisy and who you are and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, for now?
Yeah, you can start now.
Sorry. I was just like hanging out like, oh, okay, cool, I'll do that. So my name is Daisy Quaker. I'm an SEO and content marketer consultant. I work with organizations to help them figure out how to A, create content that helps them stand out, and B, how to do so in a way that helps them over time increase their search engine rankings. So that's a bit about me. I've done everything in content marketing, specifically from being the writer. So my first kind of foray into this field was as a writer. So I worked in-house. I did blog content and website content, kind of grew to encompass like strategy and all sorts of digital marketing channels in-house. And now as a freelancer, I mostly focus on content, and content and SEO both kind of go really well together, but I also add the customer research angle because I think it's one of the most essential ways to really, one, create content that's impactful and meaningful to people, that resonates with them, and that also helps them to succeed in life generally.
Cool. And just to kind of ask another question on that. So do you run a team of writers, or you just come and do the strategy and do the writing sometimes? So like, how does that work? How does your own operation work as a freelancer?
I do a mix, honestly.
Okay.
When I started, I was mostly the sole person doing everything. And then I added the first, I kind of subcontract. So I work with other freelancers and contractors. And the first role I added on was an editor. So just kind of as a writer, you need that second set of eyes on whatever you're creating to help make sure that it just meets all sorts of standards. And it's hard to do both the creative, like writing the stuff, and then coming back and editing it to the point where it meets all the brand standards. So I brought in an editor, and now I work with a writer and an editor, and I have a technical SEO friend of mine that we partner on projects as well.
Oh, cool. Cool. So you literally have a full service content marketing agency just running on its own. That's what it is.
I struggle with that because I think agencies are. I'm not really an agency. I don't know. I think I'm more just a very resourceful freelancer that has people that are really good at what they do. And that's basically how I describe it. I don't know if I'd call myself an agency. Agencies are just like way bigger and cooler. I'm not that cool.
Yeah, I think that, like, I get that. And I think in the end, we all end up being some form of agency one way or the other. I mean, maybe it's not the cool ones that have all the brand names and stuff, but it feels like at some point, once you start to pull together, or you get a writer, you get an editor, you get some technical SEO guy to do work for you, and then you're not really collecting or signing up clients where you're taking end to end. I mean, I feel like at that point in time, you're not really a freelancer anymore. What just happened is that you've crossed that first level of freelance into this space where at some point you start giving out invoices and you're paying for what you're earning. At that point, I'm like, oh, it's probably a business that you're running right now.
You kind of have to, though, right? Like, it's tough to do everything, because even as being a freelancer, you're not only just doing your work, you're getting clients, keeping them happy, which is its own job, invoicing, admin. There's just so many aspects to it that to succeed, you really need a small group of people that are also, working with you and are also independent. Because I think that, like, I initially I was anxious about that, but over time I've come to the realization that I'm never going to succeed on my own. I need people. You can't just be on your own, and like all those stories where people are like, this person did this amazing things. If you look behind the scenes, there's like a group of people who are supporting.
I mean, I'm at that stage right now where, like the past 2, 3, 4 years, all I've done is just write on my own. But right now, as you start to do content strategy jobs and stuff, you start to say to yourself that you need a writer, you need an editor, you can't do all, because every single person you see that is parroting the personal brand, sometimes I'm like, at the back end, there's like a really good machine humming on there, just churning out content, churning out social media posts. Like, there's a full service machine running that thing. So let's. You said something. Sorry, I jumped in.
No, I was gonna say, I think it's actually, it makes it, it can feel very disheartening to see those kinds of examples and be like, why can't I just like do all the things, be on all the platforms, crank out all the content, write the newsletter, and still like have a life? But it's impossible to do that. And so it's just like, it's really like makes me feel hopeful and optimistic, because I'm like, okay, I don't need to do all the things. I can work with people that can help me do all the things. And that's really, it's cool. I'm into it.
Cool. Great. Oh, so let's get into the meat of stuff. So I think for me, like the first question and like the first thing I really like us to cover is, so like from when you get on a client project where probably, let's say, I'm trying to use the scenario to just kind of also just set the context. You're building out the blog. That's probably have a couple of blog posts on it. So it's just starting out. Like, how do you start to find customer insights for that kind of project? Like, how do you approach it from the high level, just getting things done?
Well, broadly speaking, I think because a little bit of this depends on the type of industry or the type of product that the company sells. But broadly speaking, I generally don't start with what we think should rank. I think what I start with is what is the problem we're solving in the customer's life. So why would a person hire the company, or why would a person use this product? And I think that helps because it gives me a context. One, you'll know who we're trying to talk to. Two, you'll know what the problem is. And then if you're lucky, you can figure out how that problem shows up. So that's when like a bit of keyword research and customer research can come into play. But what are some of the places they might look for content or information? Because that might help inform like a guest posting strategy or a partnership sort of strategy. And then the other thing I would look for is how can we stand out in this space, in their world, but also deliver value to them. And I think we were talking about this before we started the webinar too. It's just, that's where you kind of figure out, I'm going to bounce around because this is kind of how my brain works. But when I started working in this space, it was more about like, creating content on your platform, a place that you own. Like, so your blog content was the most important thing, your newsletter is the most important thing. But I think now, because there's just so much information everywhere, distribution becomes even more of a thing. And so just kind of taking yourself out of it and putting yourself in the customer's perspective can really help that blog content. So when you do create it, you have an idea of what problem it solves. You have an idea, if you start doing keyword research and you have like, here's the kinds of problems they have. Okay, so how would they look that up in Google? And how would that show up in like keywords that we can target? And then how can we create topics that help this person that also kind of are from a position like supports our brand? So just like, it's sort of a chaotic journey a little bit, because there isn't like there are step-by-step processes, but I just never follow them consistently. So it's just like hard to, I'm just like, it's inspired.
If that makes you feel like, if this makes you feel any better, I'm learning that we live in a world where I call it socially optimized hot takes. So people tend to kind of make things very binary, like, oh, you should do X, Y, Z. And I'm learning that, look, you just have to learn to, you take stuff and you play around with it, because the point is that someone probably takes 10 steps to get there. You probably take 3 steps to get there because you do something. So like, I just feel like there's no, at these days, I try to not be very finite when I put stuff out and say stuff, because I feel like we're so used to people saying, you have to do this. And I'm like, I don't think it works that way. Like, processes are there, but people can take those processes and turn them on their heads and still get the same results you were parroting you got on social. And I'm like, no, there's no final way to do something.
And there's times also that like the processes fail you, right? Like I had a project where I was like, we need to go with what the customers are looking for. And then it led me down this rabbit hole, because the people that the people that use the product or that were using the service weren't the same as the people who we wanted to use the product or the service, or where the company was headed. So it was like a mismatch in terms of like, sometimes it's like, we'll touch on this later too, but just like, the customer research that you have sometimes can also hurt you in that it can limit your perception or perspective. It can sort of take away from like, who else is using this and where is the company trying to grow and how can we build for those people?
Yeah, I really like the approach of like, who else is using, where's the company going to? Because it feels like sometimes we kind of do research and we do it from one angle, like, oh, who's the reader and what's their problem? But there's also is like, where's the company going to over the next couple of years? Will we still be solving this problem in 3 years? Or is this problem a problem we're solving now because we're building out our main products? And so it's just a very interesting approach, because then it takes content marketing from a let's just pour content out to let's solve a problem, you know.
Which is where it should be.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
like, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I also like have started to think about is people don't really care. Like, I think as content marketers, and this is just also, maybe it's just me, but as a consultant, sometimes I can think in terms of deliverables, like how many blog posts have I written for this person, or how much have we done in terms of, have I delivered a strategy? Have I done keyword research? Have we optimized X amount of content? We tend to think in terms of numbers, but really what matters to the person who's paying us through the project is results. So if you can deliver results in 3 blog posts versus 10, that's even better for them, because then they can use your efforts towards something else. So I think just like focusing on deliverables and like the doing the content as like output of words can actually, you know, kind of keep you focused on like, okay, cranking out stuff, and then you miss like the most important part already.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, I think that every content marketer at some point should own, like, should spend some time working on a project where they see how content directly drives revenue, because that kind of helps to change the way you look at stuff. And you're like, look, it's not about pouring out 16 blog posts in a month. If it's not doing anything for the numbers, and if it's all is just driving is pure top of funnel traffic metrics, then like it's probably just vanity, you know. Just one question to just kind of double clicking on what you asked earlier on, like, so when you're trying to find out who these people are, why would they use the product and stuff, like what kind of tools do you use, how do you approach it, do you have, are there any special tools, are there free tools you've come across and stuff, you know?
I'm just writing that down so I make sure I cover it. So tools and approaches. So tools that I would use, 2 tools that I recommend working together, even though this is not necessarily, it doesn't apply to every project for sure, are Factorio and BuzzSumo. So I'll explain both, and then I'll explain how I feel like they can work really well together. Factorio will tell you if you have an audience and they're active, say, on a platform like Twitter. I think it's primarily built to pull results on Twitter. So if your audience is active on Twitter, and they do pull in other audiences, but I think that's their core strength, it will tell you what podcasts they listen to. It'll tell you what blogs they amplify or retweet or share. And then it'll also tell you what thought leaders they follow in that space. BuzzSumo, the way I use it, it's a really dynamic tool. So I think I use like only a portion of what it's capable of doing. BuzzSumo will tell you what content resonates well on social. It'll also tell you what days are popular for whatever website you're looking at, if they have a social media handle, in which case most big publications do. And it will also tell you like a few other things, like how evergreen the content is and that sort of thing. And what I like to do is I like to tie Factorio research with BuzzSumo for content insights. So if I find out that my audience follows 3 or 4 blogs, I can plug those into BuzzSumo and see what is the type of content that works well for the people that follow these kinds of publications. And that can sort of help me kind of get a sense as to how to, like, what style, you know, like it's not, maybe the 10x posts work really well for one audience, and the more like research back stuff works better for a different audience. It can help kind of give me a frame of like, here's the type of content that tends to do well. And then here's the types of like platforms they're on outside of this platform. And here's the types of days they post and that sort of thing, and the typical engagement. I find those really helpful when thinking of audience and content, because you just get ideas, you know, like you can see once you start going through, especially like once you kind of tie in, like these are the publications, this is my audience, here's the stuff they read, here's what shows up in those places they read. Like you kind of just get ideas, even if you're looking at building it from a content on your own blog or pitching content to those publications, you just like get like a good sense, and that can be a really good starting point for me. So those are the two tools I'd totally recommend. There's others, like I'm blanking, but those are the two I actually honestly really use. And then I use like my keyword research tools and those kinds of things. The other thing I would say, the approach I take is a couple things. So I will lean on tools to kind of give me quick analyses and takes, and I'll try to find, where possible, any industry studies or like industry reports, because that also gives me a sense as to like what are some of the issues outside of just the brand that I'm working on, what are some of the issues in this industry. And then I think the other thing I really try to recommend, or I try to push for, is talking to people. It can be really intimidating, and I say this as an introvert. It can be really intimidating reaching out to total strangers and like, hey, can I ask you a few questions? Would you be willing to talk to me? But there was one project I worked on where we reached out to vendors first because they worked tangential to us. So they were all serving the same industry, and we're able to get insights to the point where we felt like we could confidently somewhat have a conversation with a potential like customer or audience member from that customer pool that sounded a little bit more informed about what the industry was about. So if you can go to events, or you can sit in and join some Slack groups if some exist, or if you can reach out to vendors, I think just talking to people or getting a clue as to how people see things in this world can really be helpful. Those are the two approaches I take with like the research.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I've never used Factorio before. I'll probably just play around with it this week. But I use Bosume a lot. I really like it for, you know, how when you're trying to write a piece of content, you're saying to yourself, like, what's even popular out there, you know, on this topic? And like, what's the angle that people really like and people share? So I really like that. And I would confess, I've never tried to check like what time are people sharing content and stuff. Or I just zero in on, okay, so if if the research articles are the theme, are people sharing enough of it? Is this popular on Facebook? Is it popular on Twitter? Because then that's to say to me, what distribution channels will I go to? Although I know I always default to LinkedIn because I work mainly in B2B. So yeah,
does it pull LinkedIn Insights?
I haven't used LinkedIn Insights before. Do you use it?
No, I have never done like content solely for LinkedIn. So I've always wondered, like, LinkedIn is so closed off. Like I just never, there's no tools that really communicate to LinkedIn. So I'm like, wait, if BuzzSumo was able to do that, I'm like not using that tool enough.
No, they don't. I mean, you have to, the thing about LinkedIn is you have to learn it yourself. So you have to actively be posting content out there and tracking and seeing what are people reacting with on your platform. The good thing is that the LinkedIn company page gives you, I mean, LinkedIn in general gives you a healthy dose of insights. What are people reacting to? What do they like on your content? So you can now just start to, you know, taper back to that. And the LinkedIn algorithm is brutal. It tells you, it gives you feedback instantly. So you push the content out there, like you just instantly, you just know that, man, look, this is not working.
You just have to like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't waste time. That's what I love about the algorithm. Like it's not going to delay and say, oh, let's hope that maybe someone will like it and to pick up. Once the way it just pushes it.
It's either you sink or you swim, basically, on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. You sink or you swim. There's no time to dance around and to explain. So yeah, just kind of going on to the second stage of this. So basically, it's like when you've done all this kind of work, like let's even just kind of just niche in a bit. So let's imagine you're a content writer. You have a couple of blog posts to work on, or ebooks or case studies or stuff. You don't have access to some of these kind of tools. You don't have access to primary research. How do you use secondary research to just kind of also still find valid insights and data that resonates with the audience and with your clients.
So you're looking to use insights to write content, right? So you're looking for what is
Yeah.
the voice of the customer.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I would say reviews are like the best place if you're unable to get, you know, interviews, or you're unable to get like firsthand insights. I'd say like things like reviews, comment sections, blogs when they are active, because most times people these days don't really comment, but when they are active, they can be really cool. Those are the places I'd start with. I think also like if you're working as a freelancer, you probably don't have time to go and join a bunch of groups and really build a relationship with that audience and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But you probably have time to look at what other content resonates with this group. And it's sometimes sometimes as a writer, you find yourself working on things that are dry and the industry is dry. And so those kinds of opportunities don't exist. And so I would look at what other related industries or tangential industries can you emulate? What is it like? Are you looking to write in a more using words that will resonate more with people? Are you looking to find an angle that really works, and just kind of looking not just at the brand or its competitors, because sometimes those can be the brand and the competitors are fairly dry and there's not a lot that you can pull from. But what are some of the other industries that you can lean into that might be doing something cool that you can experiment with? Because that's the other cool thing. If you're writing content and you're just trying to like make things better, you have a lot of room to sort of play with it and refine it over time. So I'd say if you can get reviews and those can help you, if you can pull any insights from comments, blog comments when there's like hotly discussed things, that's cool, or industry publications, or people are like complaining about stuff. If your audience is active on Reddit, I've like only stalked Reddit a few times, so I can't really speak confidently about the platform, but I know it's useful for people. But just like getting a sense as to like who are the people you're talking to and what is their concerns and what is on their mind. And I think the only other thing I would say is important. I mean, I'd say not the only thing that's important, but the only thing I'd add to that is writing like a human. That can sometimes just like make all the difference. Is when you're writing about a topic, kind of bringing to mind who is going to be reading this and what are they feeling and why are they reading this. I'll try to give a good example of something. So say you're writing about an ergonomic mouse, because that's like on my computer, like right on my desk and stuff. So you're a writer and you're tasked to write about ergonomic mouses. And that is like pretty dry, right? They help your thumb and they're odd shaped, and you'll end up being disfigured a little bit and trying to like move your mouse for a few days. But it could be like somebody who has just like started working from home a lot more and is on their computer a lot and is having carpal tunnel issues or something. Like if you can just like put yourself in the mindset of who is looking for this thing, then that product or that topic becomes so much richer, because you have emotions you can draw from, or you have potentially more impactful language that you can like pull into your content. And it helps kind of frame everything else. So any topic, I mean, I'd be happy to play a game of like try to find an empathetic angle for every topic under the sun. But any topic can really, if you can add empathy to it, I think that the writing is just like, even if you don't have all the other things, the writing will improve itself too.
That's true, actually. And that's a really good example, honestly. I mean, because and so the last part of this is just basically and then we can get into questions if anyone has questions. Is so how do you apply these to all these insights you get to drive your blog topics, keywords, distribution, like how do you use it? How do you use it? How does Daisy use it?
Uh, Daisy uses it for keyword research. So if I do some, I'm thinking of three distinct projects where I've used this and how it turned out. So just kind of trying to think of pathways here. So in one project, I used customer research as part of an overall content branding effort. So we were trying to drive awareness. I think this is how you found out about my work too, but we're trying to drive awareness to a very boring topic. And we looked at customer research to try and pull in, why does this matter? So kind of similar to that example of the ergonomic mouse. In this case, it was like, why does this matter? What feelings can we tap into? Because I think at first, we tend to get really logical about like numbers and stats and figures to prove things, but like people are so emotional. Like I'm an emotional person, you're an emotional person. You might rationalize logically, but you lead with your heart, or you move like your intentions come from the heart. So we tried in that project to really lean into, why would this matter and what would this tie into, emotionally speaking or philosophically speaking, to the bigger picture? Who is this person? What do they tell themselves about what they buy or who they are or how they operate? And how can we tap into that in the context of this product? So it was to drive awareness for a very bland topic. And we ended up creating a very impactful campaign that led to a customer tattoo. So like somebody really loved that messaging to the point that they got it tattooed. And I think that I really like to go to that example because it's like demonstrates so clearly you can take a topic that, you know, you might be falling asleep as you're being told about, and then tie it to like, why does this really matter? And who is this? Who would care about this message? Who would care about this deeply? And why would they care about that? And how does this tie into that? And so like kind of just bringing that full circle can help you create a really impactful campaign. And then in another example, so that's like how to create in a context perspective. And if you want me to go into detail, I'm happy to do that. In another example, it would be to use customer research to figure out keywords. So kind of similar to that Factorio customer example, but just kind of finding an audience first that is online. So say you're an airport in a small town and you want to drive awareness that you also have flights like the bigger cities do, and you just kind of want to increase traffic to your airport. So sort of finding like, what are some of the things, like if I was in that position, what are some of the things that people who are frequent business flyers might appreciate about having a smaller airport, and how can we lean into that? Maybe it might be the average wait time that you get at a big airport versus a smaller airport, and how many calls you can make or something, or how many things you can do once you're just like past checkout. So just using your audience to just do like a very broad keyword research in terms of what are some of the topics that they care about, and not really looking at it from the lens of like your brand, just like what matters to them. What are some of the big things that really resonate with them? And then narrowing that down to, okay, now that we know like the big umbrella of like, here's all the different search queries and here's all the different topics and how they all fit in together, what are some of those that we could like really drill into and really own? So is it productivity? Is it time management? Is it convenience? Is it, you know, what are some of the things that we can then pull into fun bits of content that can be used for social, that can be used for SEO content purposes? Just like, what are some of those things, or what are some creative campaigns we can create that are one, creative, but also backed by content? Because I think that's the other thing we as content marketers have an opportunity to do, is like work with creatives to sort of create something that is, you know, there's cool and creative on one side, but also there's like 10 posts that follow up with that, like kind of like a merging of those worlds. And then you get like a cool snazzy side to it, but also like a very impactful, like here's the actionable parts to it. So that's one angle too. And then the last angle, it can be very illuminating in terms of, I worked on one project where after doing customer research, I found that there wasn't, this audience wasn't looking up keywords. Like, I mean, they weren't looking up this content. There was no keyword search volume based on like, drawing from all the keywords I heard in conversations. There was no keyword research, like search query volumes that I could pull. So that became a matter of, okay, you don't need content, you need relationships. So it can also be used in the sense of to like, are you creating content for an audience that wants to read this content, or are you just going to be swimming upstream? Because if we had continued with, okay, this is our audience, we need to go out there and we need to like create a 10 blog posts using this keyword, plug it everywhere, you know, compete, create this topic, this 10x post, this research thing, and we would have had a dud, right? And that's, nobody wants to be in that situation where you've worked so hard and your content isn't getting traffic because it's just, people aren't interested. So it can also be really helpful in terms of once you kind of get to understand the audience and you see what, like, especially when you're doing customer research, if you're asking people like, what sites do you follow or what newsletters do you read? Or if people aren't really like able to come up with like 3 or 4, like if you ask me as a SEO content person, I can probably name 3 newsletters I read every week. You know, it's sort of like, if people aren't able to sort of say, oh, this is something I read, then it can sort of start to give you clues as to like, is this an audience where content is actually helpful, or is this an audience where we need to change our structure away from content for SEO into content but targeting events? Like, how can we like lean into that? What are some of the ways we can use event marketing and content marketing together? What are some like partnerships or maybe just some like relationships we can build in that space and that sort of thing? So again, that's and in time sometimes that turns into like, can we, you know, reach out to other vendors in this space and partner with them to create something cool that can also get our brand out there, which is kind of like content, but it's not. And so I'm a very fluid, when I say content, I'm very fluid in terms of like what it ends up looking like. But what my point is to the freelance writer, when you do that kind of research, even though it can be a little bit scary to just say like, look, there's not a lot of search volume, it can also be illuminating in that you're not going to be creating stuff and then people show up and say, where's the traffic? Where's the result? If they aren't there to begin with, it can kind of help to like help lead that, guide people through that.
I mean, I also like the way you look at it, because it starts to tie into something that I've seen it happen every now and then, but you know, because when we hear content marketers, we tend to think blog posts, ebooks, case studies. But I'm like, content marketing kind of fuses between social, YouTube, video. I mean, and it's not just from a distribution point of view, but from a content strategy point of view. Distribution shouldn't be something you think about because, oh, we've created a blog post, so let's repurpose it into a video. Because I almost feel like sometimes, because of the thing about repurposing, the thinking goes out of the window and we just repurpose. And it's okay to just repurpose and stuff. But as a content marketer, you should be thinking about the sense of like, how do I bring value to my client in such a way that I'm more than just the guy or the lady or the person who creates 10 blog posts a month, but the person who creates a content marketing campaign or a content marketing program that drives value and drives awareness and conversion and stuff. So I mean, like, so I really like that approach of looking at it, because then you start to answer questions like, look, do we even have an audience here? Should we even be writing blog posts? Is that a waste of resources? You know, so.
Because it's like, almost like, who wants to be in that situation? You know, like, even if you sell the client on, all right, we're going to create blog posts for you. You do some keyword research, you find out that there isn't traffic, at least from a search perspective, on that content. Is it better then to sort of say, we should look at creating social content and just be social first? Because that could be a very viable way to deliver value to clients and get like conversations going. And then you can also like maybe build the confidence to say, okay, now that we've done this, we should try this other content element. But yeah, like, we have to sort of get away from thinking of, and I say we, like, collectively, content marketers and maybe even clients, but just getting away from thinking of like, we need to crank out 1 blog post a week, 1 newsletter a month, 10 posts, and so like, it's just like, it becomes like this beast, you know, you're just like throwing, and it's just like mulching effort. And what are you getting in return? And it's like, it can also feel very exhausting, you know, as a marketer, to be in that situation too, of like, we're going to create create, and then we'll just like figure it out. So I think customer research can also help with that. Like once you figure out your audience, even if you have a rough idea, just start with like, there's times where it's like not clearly defined, you have 3 or 4 audiences, but even if you have a rough idea of like 3 or 4 audiences, you can use keyword research tools or social listening tools to just be like, what are some of the topics? And are people really reading? Or are they watching YouTube videos?
Yeah. Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah, so I think at this point, I'll just see if anyone has questions from the attendees. Does anyone have questions? And I feel like this is up to the task. Something else I was going to add was that you said you had some slides, right? Could you please share with me later, and I could just share with the community?
Yeah.
If that's okay with you, yeah, sure.
Do you want me to share them right now or after this?
Yeah, you can just send them. Yeah, after this, you can send us an email, and then I'll just send the deck, because we have like a Telegram group where we chat and talk and share stuff. I mean, the idea is just basically like build a good hub of content marketing writers from Africa. That's just the goal behind this.
That's cool. What I actually think would be more useful to the group maybe is if I shared the worksheet. So I created a worksheet that I led people through my last presentation, and I say it's better because like the PowerPoint, you're just like, cool, good story, good for you. But like the worksheet might actually be something that people can sort of
useful.
Copy and use however they want.
Cool. Sure, that would be great. So yeah, once again, Daisy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah. Me too. It was fun.
All right then. Have a great day. Yeah.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye everyone.